Welcome to the Business of Apparel podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street, and I can't wait to share this episode with you. Welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast. Today we are wrapping up our 7-part series where I am teaching you all about the secrets behind the billion-dollar apparel brands. And while this is the last episode in this special series of the podcast, there is still so much opportunity for you to learn about these topics from me. So we are also going to be doing a lot of free workshops as we move through the rest of this year and into next year. This is one of my big goals, is to figure out how often I can do free workshops so that we can get this information out into the hands of everybody who needs it. So if you go to thebusinessofapparel.com/free workshop, all one word, you can sign up for whatever next one is coming up. We just had our very first one yesterday on Thursday, February 8th, and it went so well. Everybody had such great questions. We had great dialogue throughout the course. Everybody had such great questions. We had great dialogue throughout the entire workshop. And we also had everybody walk away with their own filled out line planning spreadsheet. This is a tool that I used to use as a product line manager inside a billion-dollar brand. And I gifted it away for free yesterday. We also had a little raffle at the end of the workshop. So if you're interested in coming to the next one, know that there is likely one coming up for you, regardless of when you're listening to this podcast episode. Now, today, I really get to nerd out on you about project management, because we are going to talk about one of the most crucial and yet one of the most hated topics in apparel development, which is timeline and calendar. Now, I get it. When I talk to people in the community, when I used to sit at corporate apparel desks, when I work with new clients, or even try to talk to potential new people who want to work with us at Unmarked Street, the number one topic that we talk about that people look at me like I'm crazy about is timeline. When I reach out to people and say, look, if you want to build apparel from scratch, you are looking at a 9-month calendar. So if you start today and you've got ideas in your head today, 9 months from today, you might be able to launch your line. That's how fast we could possibly get it done. People look at me like I have 2 or 3 heads, like I am just crazy for that long of a timeline. And there are a couple of different distinctions here when I'm talking about apparel development in the way that I've been talking about it for the last part of this series. And as you know, how we talk about it on this podcast. So I am talking specifically about like proprietary, custom, like I made this apparel from scratch. It was an idea in my head. It wasn't something that was existing out in the world already. And I wanted to make it. So we started from an idea on paper, a sketch on paper, and we went ahead and then figured out how to develop it, design it, make a fit of body right, how to construct it, who to work with, all of these pieces and parts. We put all of that together, and then we produced our apparel line, and now we're ready to sell it. Getting through all of that process is not a short timeline. One of the conversations that sticks out most in my head when I think about timeline is a call that I was on last year where we were talking to a brand overseas who was really excited to start their own lifestyle apparel line. They had some great color palettes put together, some great product ideas put together. And when I told them, this is so fantastic, we can probably get this done for you in 9 months to a year, they were just flabbergasted. They could not believe it. They said, we've been working with some potential manufacturers and we've been interviewing some, and all of them are telling me that they can go through this process in 3 or 4 months. And I think my jaw dropped to the floor. I said, I don't know how they're telling you 3 to 4 months to go from idea on paper to product in hand, unless you're doing some sort of merchandising project. And so when I say merchandising, I am talking about taking a t-shirt or a hoodie or some other product essentially off the shelf. It's already made and it is ready to be screen printed, or it is ready to be adhered with a woven label, or it is ready to be embroidered in some way so that you can make it yours, maybe with your own logo or your own brand name. But we're not actually talking about making product from scratch in that timeline. So if someone is quoting you 3 or 4 months, let's just break this down a little bit. So what I like to do as a project manager, and this is really good advice for any of you who are looking into project management, when we build timelines, we really like to start at the end date. So we're looking at, when do I want to launch my product? When do I want to have products in hand? I can sell them to my customers. And then we work backwards from there. And the reason we do that is because adding all of those little timelines from my launch date backward toward my start date is going to help me really indicate the best planned start date that I can get. Once we do that, and we really do it at a high level, like worst case scenario, like how long will it take me to get prototypes from my factory? How long will it take our team to measure samples, prep samples, run fittings, write comments, and get that back out to the factory? So we start adding all of those weeks and months and days together to get our full timeline. And then what we do is, if it looks too long to us as a team, we go back in and we start adjusting those timelines. So maybe we need to really push our factory for a 3-week sample turn time when they're giving us 4 weeks. That might not always be possible though. So if you're planning for 3 weeks, I have to hit 3 weeks with my factory, and they don't send you a sample for 4 weeks, are you blowing yourself out of the water? Are you not going to be able to launch your product on time? Are you going to be in trouble? When we talked to this potential client last year, I asked them to help walk me through what that 3 to 4 month timeline from their manufacturer looked like, so that I could understand, maybe this can be done faster. Maybe 3 or 4 months is totally doable, and I'm just stuck in my old ways, right? Like, I have this old corporate traditional background, and I just need to learn differently. Well, unfortunately, they had not been told by their manufacturer how that 3 to 4 month timeline was going to work. They had told them that they were going to be able to do their own fabrics. So they were going to be able to choose from a mill any fabric that they wanted. They were going to be able to dye it any color that they wanted. So the mill was going to go through a manufacturing process and a dyeing process while they were going through an expedited design process, and then eventually try to manufacture all of their goods. I have never seen this done in 3 or 4 months. I will say at Unmarked Street, we had a project done in 6 months, and that was kind of an anomaly. I do talk about that a little bit in the Business of Apparel online course when we really get into timelines and how that one ended up working, if you really want to squeeze down to 6 months, but it is not recommended to plan for that. So what we do when we build a timeline is we really, like I said, we start at the launch date and we work backwards. So the first thing that we're going to look at is your production timeline. And the best people to work with on your production timeline is your production manufacturer. They're going to really be able to tell you how long it's going to take to cut your garments, cut all the fabrics, get all of the trims prepared to put onto your garments, get everything sewn, get everything quality checked, get everything packaged up, and then put into boxes ready to go to your shipping warehouse. So this timeline that we typically see in the production realm goes from anywhere at manufacturers to from 60 days to 120 days. So you're looking at either anywhere between 2 months to 4 months just to do production. And then you want to start tacking on your development timeline to that. So once you've approved your development, that's when you can go into production processes. So then how long do you think your development process is going to take? Now, if you're a really dialed team, maybe you have a senior technical designer who is a master at fitting perfect garments. You only ever need one prototype. And when you get a size set, it's just a jump size set. You don't need to see every single size because your grade is on point. Your customers love it. Every single size of every customer that you have loves every single fit that you have. So you only have to do one proto because you've got a master at fitting. You only have to do a jump size set because your grade is perfect. And then you need to get a pre-production sample. Okay, that, even if you're locally manufacturing, so you don't have any transit time, let's say you can run down the street to your manufacturer and you can pick up your garments as soon as they're done. You can run a fitting the exact same day, and then maybe on the next day you're sending comments back out to them. This is the fastest that you could probably do it, right? They still need time to be able to sew, fit that into their sample room timeline. And so best case scenario, to go through all 3 of those processes, you're probably looking at about 2 months of development time. So this is where we're looking at something where, okay, we've got maybe 2 months of a production timeline. If you were able to negotiate that with your manufacturer, you've approved your development. Let's say your team is perfect when it comes to development. They don't ever need a second proto. Getting a full size set is not a thing. Your pre-production samples always come perfect and they are just approvable exactly as they are. So now, are you frustrated by feeling like an outsider in your own industry? You're not alone. I spent years feeling the same way. Are you tired of endless research and you can only learn this stuff by getting a job in fashion advice? Me too. That's why I created the Business of Apparel online course. My years of insider knowledge condensed into video tutorials, demos, and downloads. Learn at your own pace, no fluff. Just key topics like building target profiles and mastering financials. This information is genuinely unavailable anywhere else. Grow your brand, become an apparel industry aficionado, and unlock millions in potential revenue. The value? Over $50,000 with millions potential for your brand. Don't miss out. Sign up for the Business of Apparel online course today at thebusinessofapparel.com/course. So now you've got 4 months to your entire timeline. And then we need to add design. So we need to build a tech pack and we need to design our product. So this is where we get into the timeline of like, maybe I can squeeze this into 6 months, right? But how many of us are perfect on every single first prototype? I have rarely seen this at brands, even at brands that have some of the top talent in the industry to be able to fit garments and engineer their patterns in ways that are off the charts. I also personally believe that rushing through a first prototype and not requesting a second prototype just to make sure everything looks great before I go to my size set is a mistake. I'm missing out on the opportunity to make my garment just that much better for my customer and my end user by trying to rush through the process. So ideally, in the world of apparel, we actually plan on a 90 to 120 day production time. So let's say we're looking at 3 months for production. And then we want to look at pre-production samples, size set samples, and we're going to look at least 2 prototypes. And I like to allow for a month of each of these because that allows my manufacturer a couple of weeks, usually about 3 weeks, to turn samples around for me to make sure that they have sample yardage on hand, make sure their sample room has time to sew everything, make sure they're not rushing through the process because we don't want them to rush and make mistakes. And then I give myself and my team basically a week to then turn around the comments, do the fitting, and work on our processes, which ends up to that 4 weeks or about a month of time. So because it's pre-production, size set, and 2 protos, we're looking now at 4 months. So 4 months plus 3 months is 7, and then we're tacking on the design phase to the beginning of it. So now we're at that 9 months that I really like to recommend for everybody to put into their timeline. So if you are considering starting an apparel brand and you're like, I really want to do this year, 2024 is my year to build my apparel brand and launch it. Well, let's say you're planning to launch for the holidays this year. You need to start right now because 9 months from today, you are going to want to be launching your product line. And if you squeeze that timeline any tighter, you are going to risk developing and producing product that is not of high quality and has mistakes in it or doesn't fit your customer the way that you want it to. At the end of the day, this might kill your brand. If you don't have good product to put out into the market, your customers aren't going to come back to you. They're not going to say good things about your brand, and they are not going to buy any more from you. So building a timeline is crucial. And I want to definitely add a little bit of spice here in the way of project management. I want to talk a little bit about the project management triangle. So as project managers, when we're looking at writing out a project scope of work, or SOW, you might see that abbreviation places where as project managers, we're talking about, send me a new SOW. That's scope of work. We want to know how much work we have to do. When we start putting together all the elements of that, we put it into what we call a project charter. And this project charter is an actual full document where we write out all of the different elements of what this project is going to look like. For the apparel world, I have never seen this executed on a really good level. The apparel industry really likes to just do line planning and then kind of fly by the seat of our pants. If we were following traditional project management rules in the apparel industry, we would probably write a seasonal project charter and we would put in all of the different new styles that we wanted to develop, all of the carryover styles that we need to still worry about color and production processes on. We would also then put together the timeline for everything. We would put together a budget for everything. We would look at all of our target costs. We would look at how the teamwork needs to overlap with each other so that maybe as design is working on color and sketches, the tech design team can start working on making sure the grade rule looks okay. Those are what we call leads and lags, and we can overlap leads and lags on our timeline. And if you've ever seen a Gantt chart, the way that like timelines kind of overlap with each other in this horizontal, like Excel spreadsheet type bar chart, that's how we start to see different timelines overlap with each other. This team can be doing XYZ while another team is doing ABC. And so instead of waiting and cascading our timelines on top of each other and everything needs to go, A needs to finish before we can start B, and then B needs to finish before we can start C, we can actually do, A and X can be happening at the same time. B and Y can be happening at the same time, and C and Z can be happening at the same time, so that we're actually moving our timeline a little bit faster. Now, how we kind of adjust that and how we make sure that those overlap, maybe they're not happening at the exact same time. Maybe design needs to start first and then tech design can start. But that is how we would build a timeline. Obviously, then we're also building a budget, like I said, and we are putting information into this project charter about the level of quality that we expect by the end of production. So what are our quality standards? How are we checking quality? What is our manufacturer doing for us in the way of quality checks? Are we going to send someone overseas to check quality while production is happening? How are we going to manage all of that? So this project management triangle that we talk about ends up being the top of the pyramid is quality. And then the two below points are timeline and budget. And as project managers, it is our goal to create as equal of a triangle as we possibly can. So we balance out these 3 points of the project management triangle as evenly as we can as project managers. We want our timeline to be as close as possible to ideal. We want our budget to be as close as possible to ideal. And we want quality to be as close as possible to ideal. And then the project starts. And as project managers, it is our number one job. Okay, when I took my PMP exam, my project management professional exam, which is a very, very hard test to pass. When I took my exam, the answer to almost every single question on that test was put it in the change log. That is our number one task as project managers. Every single time something changes from the original project charter, we are supposed to have a document called a change log that we then go in and record what changed, who changed it, who approved the change, and how it affected our timeline, our quality, or our budget. And this is how we then wrap up entire projects. So at the end of the entire season or at the end of the entire project, we would go back and do what we call a retro meeting. We would look through the entire change log and we would say, okay, this is where we got off track. We took way too many timeline changes. We approved way too many timeline changes, or we accepted way too many budget changes. Our costing came in so different from the factory than we were accepting, and we approved all of it instead of negotiating. These are the types of things that you want to keep in your change log so that your retro meeting with the entire team can look back on it. You can see the data right there on what changed and how often. And then you can set better standards for the next project or the next season. As a team, you can all then say, okay, we recognize that we accepted too many high costs. Next season, we're really going to leave more time for negotiation with the factory, and that is super important for us. That's how we improve over time as teams. That's how we as project managers help teams improve over time. And so the interesting thing about the project management triangle, as we start to fill out our change log, when things change throughout our process, is that the triangle starts to bend and move a little bit. So when you think about a triangle, if it was in free space, like let's say it was just floating in front of you, if you decided you wanted to pull on one of the corners just a little bit, like let's say we're going to not leave budget as ideal as we possibly wanted at the beginning of our project cheddar. We're going to pull on it just a little bit so that we can increase prices. Well, all of a sudden, the entire shape of your triangle changes. And so all of a sudden, timeline and quality also need to be adjusted to account for what's happening with your budget. Similarly, if you need to pull on that timeline corner of the triangle, you are going to be seeing quality and budget adjusted. So let's say I really want to squeeze my timeline. I'm putting together a 9-month timeline, but my manager doesn't like that. They want to go to a 6-month timeline. It is mandatory. We need to figure out how to get this done in 6 months. We have to launch in 6 months. Okay. So I start to pull on that timeline corner of the project management triangle, and all of a sudden I need to make concessions somewhere else. I can maybe leave budget the same. Budget is maybe an angle that I can leave the same on this triangle, but all of a sudden my quality is going to decrease. My timeline gets faster, so my quality decreases. Or it could absolutely be budget. Maybe I want things faster, so my factory is going to tell me, well, it's going to cost you more, because we're going to have to expedite all of this. You're asking us to put you in as a priority, so we're going to charge you for that. Those are the types of things that we look at as project managers when we're really adjusting a timeline and giving you a shorter timeline. We're then also figuring out how does that impact the quality of the goods or the quality of the project itself. And we're definitely talking about how does that affect our budget? Do we need to pay more for a shorter timeline? And if so, is that even doable for us? Can we afford that? So as apparel industry experts, I have seen this a ton on Instagram from a bunch of fashion freelancers that are out there saying the same message. Developing a product line from scratch is not something that you can or should rush through. It is actually a really fun process. Making apparel is like a dream job. It's really fun. It's super creative. Rushing through it just makes it hard. It makes it less fun. It makes all of us kind of burn out and work way too hard on something that is supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be a creative, fun, design-based industry. And we take the fun out of it a lot of times by making it too hard to do. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this, how I build timelines, what are the recommendations for doing this? I even have a timeline building template out there that we're going to be putting up on the website soon that you can purchase, but it is available to you for free inside the Business of Apparel online course. So we go into that quite a bit. We talk about it in our free workshops. So again, please come sign up for our free workshop. You can go to thebusinessofapparel.com/free workshop. If you are listening to this live on launch day, we still have 3 February workshops coming up on Monday the 12th, Wednesday the 14th, and Friday the 16th. We would love to see you in there. And then we will be launching probably every couple of months from here, just so that we can make sure to get this information out to as many people as possible, because it is nowhere to be found on the internet. It just blows my mind. So please reach out with any questions that you have. Please sign up for the workshop. I also ask that if this episode was helpful to you in any way, to please leave a review. We love 5 stars everywhere that we are. And just an exciting little announcement, we have a very special guest coming up for the next week's podcast episode, so make sure to stay tuned for that. See you then. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show, and if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, thebusinessofapparel.com, where I do weekly trainings through my YouTube video channel, a weekly newsletter, blog articles, and so many more resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand. This podcast is produced by Box 7 Media, who I cannot speak highly enough of. If you're looking to start your own podcast, you can reach out to Jeremy at Box 7 Media on LinkedIn anytime.